the luxury of talking to people that know what I'm talking about. Hello friends, so I'm back for my second broadcast of the afternoon. Harold, as you can see, broadcast number 1 is still back in the shadows painting, and so he's going to work on his painting. I'm going to start working on mine. This is a 42 by 42 inch, unusual size, commission, and I got this from an ad agency. I'm wrong. Got the blast from the past there. Got this from an art gallery in town for one of their clients. And the request was, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh has a very easily identified Main Street. It's not called Main Street, it's called Fayetteville Street, but it's wider than all the other streets. It goes from our state capitol building down to the Symphony Auditorium. It's only 6 blocks long and it's wide, and that's where all the parades and so forth. So evidently somebody wants 2 paintings, one looking north on Fayetteville Street, the other looking south on Fayetteville Street. And I have 2 photographs that I'm going by here. I went downtown several times a couple weeks ago, morning and afternoon, because I've painted this street so many times, way more than anybody in history. I mean, that's not surprising, because most artists don't want to paint the street 100 times like I have, or 200 times. So I'm just crazy that way. So let me show you my 2 reference photos. The reason I went morning and evening is because looking south, the lighting is better in the morning. Looking north, the lighting's better in the evening. So this is looking south. This is a morning shot, and this is the edited photograph that I sent to my client. They came back with various and sundry comments, and from that, just in Photoshop, I edited, well, I dropped in a different sky, and I darkened much of the quarters. So this photoshopped version is what I'm really going to be going by, and I'm taping that up on a bookshelf right here beside me. Once again, I'm working in my upstairs studio because my downstairs is occupied by my wonderful grandchildren. And I am delighted for them to be here, but in the moments when they get fussy, it's not quite so delightful. All right, so this is the format, square. There's the scene, I'm looking at it. And of course, I'm going to start by, it didn't last long, did it? I told Harold to close the door when they got fussy, and they got fussy already. They're great kids. Well, if you watch me, you've seen my kids. I love them to death. And the day they come will soon enough when they're all going to move out, and then we'll all be sad. Okay, so the finished image, according to my according to my reference over here, is cool at the top, warm in the middle, and dark at the bottom. So let's start with cool at the top. That means I'm inclined to do a warm underpainting marks, warm abstract. And because this canvas is just large enough it's just large enough that I decided I'd rather make these initial marks with a rag instead of with a brush. Now, I just discovered something just right with that first stroke. I discovered, whoa, this canvas has a lot more tooth than I had expected. No big deal. I just make a mental adjustment, adjust accordingly, and carry on. Now, I want some cool stuff right through the middle. Ooh, that's nice. And I don't want all straight lines here because, well, no, there's a great big zero right in the middle of the canvas. What am I going to do about that? Well, the answer is pretty easy. Just make another one or two right beside it. So now it's not horribly centric. Now, I found myself lately really liking little bits of some real intense yellow, real cool yellow coming through as an underpainting. Again, to anybody who's watching me for the first time, you're completely confused. That's all right. So I'm painting this. By the way, I forgot to do my, didn't I? Did I do my Daily Art Adventure 588? Okay, there we go. Starting a cityscape. There, now I'm official and legal. Okay, I'm going to drop those rags in a bucket of water and switch to some brushes here now. Okay, so to you newcomers, what in the world am I doing here? I'm going to do yellow and green. Now, at the moment, this composition is not working very well. I've gotten a little bit carried away, just doing one thing and then another and then another and another. And it almost doesn't look like an intelligent being did this. But don't count me out yet. When this happens, if and when this happens, especially now in what I'm calling my new season of painting, which is I'm going to take a little bit more time on my paintings than I have mostly over the last 15 years. That means that I can also take a little bit more time in the underpainting stage. All right, but I will say this is where I wish I were painting either outdoors or down in my garage or something like that, because I would very much like to stand back and throw some paint, literally throw some paint on this canvas. I'll tell you what, I'm going to temporarily take a big piece of canvas, put it on the ground, on the floor, underneath my feet, very carefully. All right, I'll call that good enough. That's about as much throwing as I can do. I'm about to explain to you newcomers, what in the world am I doing? Here's the image. Here's the image I'm painting. And there's how I started. You should feel offended. What are you doing? But before I explain that, here's part of the fun of this new season. I didn't used to do this in my old season. I never did opaque white in the abstract part of the painting. All right, so let's go back. Harold, you feel free to correct me anytime I say anything wrong or if I'm not explaining something very well. Because Harold's heard, like all of you regulars, Harold's heard all this stuff probably several times. Why in the heck? By the way, in the household that I grew up, you'd get your mouth washed out for using the word heck.
Really?
Yeah. So I just want somebody to know, this is me being naughty. As you can see, I've pretty much recovered from my childhood. No, I had idyllic childhood. Are you kidding? Would to God every person on the planet had a childhood as perfect as mine. Anyway, so, but there's certain aspects of it that I have recovered from. Anyway, I digress. You regulars don't listen to him. That's all he ever does is digress. All right, why am I starting? Shut up, I'm entertaining myself anyway. Why do I start with an abstract painting? I didn't always paint this way. I continued to evolve, started painting more or less with this technique, which is acrylics, mostly a transparent acrylics underneath and oil on top. Okay, I made a hard right in my art life 15 years ago. And so, but in those 15 years, exactly how I do it has changed. So for the last 2 years probably, I've been doing this crazy thing where the very first thing I put down on a canvas is an abstract painting. Not only is it abstract, let me hold up my reference again. It's abstract opposite of the final picture. Okay, so I have a lot of cools up here. Therefore, I have a lot of warms up here. I have a lot of vertical and quite a few horizontal marks in the image. Therefore, there's no vertical and no horizontal. I have circles and angles. Then there's a lot of warm right here. So I have cool running right through the middle. Are you with me? So not only is it an abstract painting, and this is important, it's an abstract that is the antithesis of what the final painting is going to be. But, and this is what I'm working on right now, it's got to be, in my book, what I'm aiming for is it's got to be not just an abstract mess, but in fact, a beautiful abstract painting. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time on it, because 99% of this is going to be covered up. Maybe I should say 98.7%, something like that. Are you with me? 98% of this abstract painting is going to be covered up. Therefore, I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours. That's just not good business. But I do want it to be an attractive, or if I may even use the word, I do want it to be a beautiful abstract painting. Now, the obvious question is why? If 6, 7, 8, 9, I keep bringing the number down, somewhere between 95 and 99% of it is going to be covered up. Why is it important that it be a beautiful abstract painting? That answer is mathematically simple. That's just simple. Here's the answer. Because I don't know which part of this abstract painting is going to show up. Are you with me? Let that sink in. I have no idea, absolutely no idea, which part or which parts of this painting are going to show up. Right? Let that sink in. Therefore, what? Therefore, I want every inch of this abstract painting to be beautiful. And maybe you don't like abstract painting. You know, I can't fix that if you don't. I love good abstract painting. I hope you can tell. Isn't that pretty? I don't know about you. If you don't think this is, we're not going to compare this to the Mona Lisa. Do you understand? We're not going to compare this to William Bouguereau. We're not going to compare this to Francois Boucher or to a Rembrandt or a Frans Hals. Need I go on? We're not even going to compare this to a Dan Nelson finished painting. That's not the point. So it's not beautiful in that kind of way. But is it not?
Visually pleasant.
Visually pleasant. Is it not fun to look at? I believe it is. And of course, there's a lot of people who say, I don't like abstracts. Well, the tone of voice is the problem there. It's okay if you don't love abstracts. That is perfectly okay. but not with an attitude. Anyway, but everybody who has childlike eyes, if I ask my grandchildren downstairs who are 2, 4, 6, and 8 years old, hey, is this pretty? I think every one of them will go, yeah, whatever accent they have at their various ages. All right, so I think I'm done now with that. So did that make sense? I want this to be pretty because I don't know which parts are going to show through. So whatever parts show through are going to look killer good when I'm done. I'm going to be so glad. I don't know where it's going to be, but I'm going to be so glad that I put it down there. All right, and I'm getting a little bit sophisticated. I understand that. Some of you, again, you newcomers are like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. So, you know, go look at my finished paintings. If you wonder, this guy's no good, what's he talking about? Then maybe I am no good, but I'm enjoying the illusion, so leave me alone. All right, now one more thing. This is new toy time. Harold, have you seen me using my...
Yeah.
My
water soluble.
Yeah. Actually, I've graduated. I switched from water soluble to watercolor sticks.
Oh.
Because they're even more pungent.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I like the water soluble pastels fine,
Yeah.
but I think I like these even better.
From Turner Artists still.
Yep. So these are watercolor sticks for you kids, you kids that grew up, using watercolor in the little trays. That's what this is. This is what's in the tray. It's just in a stick form. Or those of you who know, I use watercolor pencils a lot in many respects. So why am I doing skinny lines? Just because they look good juxtaposed next to, on top of, beside the fat lines. So now my abstract painting is even a little bit better because I got fat lines and skinny lines. And I'm done with that. Now it's time to start drawing. Draw. Things get serious. The good news is I don't have to get it right the first time, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth. Around about the 8th or 9th time, I'm supposed to start getting it right. But I've got about 8 or 9 tries. Not only that, listen to this, since I've gone to that length saying that. Not only that, it's actually, here's some happy irony. It's actually advantageous, beneficial, better if my early marks are slightly off. What? You say, if you're a thinking person, you go, that's crazy. It's real easy to demonstrate the truth of that statement, though. Listen to me. Here it is. So what I'm drawing right now is, here's the picture again. Here's the edge of that big blue building on the left. It's actually, in real life, it's glass with a blue tint, but the building often looks blue. All right, so that's what I'm trying to draw. Now let's just imagine for a minute that I accidentally put this line in exactly the right spot. That means the next time I draw it, I'm going to put another mark right in the same place because I'm going to judge that it's in the right place. I'm going to draw this image I just mentioned a minute ago about roughly 8 times. So if my first mark is dead on and every mark thereafter is also dead on, I'm going to have one mark piled up 8 deep. In other words, a boring line, just a line. Whereas on the other hand, if I'm a little bit to the left or to the right of accurate, then the next time I come, I'm going to be so when if I'm lucky, when I get to the end of the painting process, when I get to the final stages, this line will be jittery. There'll be several indications, and it'll be fascinating, interesting. So does that make sense? That's why it's actually beneficial if my early marks are slightly off. And then you could say, well, why don't you just make intentionally wrong marks. And I can say, thank you very much. That's what I just finished doing. Well, okay, not just that, but no, okay. The reason I'm not going to, on purpose, draw erroneously, is because it's hard enough. Do I hear an amen? It's hard enough getting this stuff accurate, trying every time. How much more difficult would it be if I was intentionally doing it wrong every time? Does that make sense? Are you with me? So yeah, I'm trying to get it right. It's not extremely likely that most of these lines, it's possible that one or two of these initial lines are going to end up being in the right place. Much more likely that almost all of them will be tweaked and adjusted. Okay, since I've gone that far, and I say, so what do I do when I discover some line that, doggone it, I did it right from the get-go. It was correct. Then yes, some of you are thinking, well, couldn't you just come back and draw an erroneous line on purpose? And the answer is, ha, dog, you guys are smart. That's exactly right. It's exactly what I'll do. If I find myself with some lines that I accidentally drew correct right from the get-go, then I will intentionally mess them up so that I have in fact visual interest late in the process. All of this, all that you see me doing, all that you hear me pontificating about, I'm assuming some people don't even know what the word pontificate means. Anyway, all this stuff that I'm always pontificating about is the end of a very, very long process, evolution, in my art life, in my painting life. It was about 20 years ago. It was in my paint realistic phase, as opposed to what I do now, which is what I call abstract realism. Okay, I just noticed all of this structure right here, see? So usually I don't have to worry. All of this stuff is too far that way, so all of these lines need to go this way, at least 1.5 inches. Witness my distress. Get the point? There is none. I am not distressed about that. That's ironically a good thing. Okay, now the vanishing point here. Here's the interesting thing about this street. It's only 6 blocks long. I'm going to call that my vanishing point. So all of these are supposed to aim at that. I'm pretty close there. One of the ironies about this street, even though it's 6 blocks long, it has a couple rolls in it, a couple waves in it. It's not straight. And this end is slightly higher than that end. So all of that comes into play. All right, so I started to say, I'm sorry, I interrupt myself because I'm painting and then one thought knocks another. See, so I'm already drawing my correction. And my correction might be wrong, right? All right, so 20 years ago, I was telling you that I was I was thoroughly, comfortably ensconced in my paint realistically mode, paint realism mode. And I put down a stroke. It just dawned on me, I used to have that painting right over here somewhere. Oh, I still do. Hang on, this is an irony. Can you get that painting off the wall? Thanks, Harold. Yahoo. Since I mention it, Okay. This is a painting I was doing in about 1999 or 2000. I didn't know how to paint nearly as well as I do now. So everything that happened, anything good that happened here was an accident. But there was a stroke. This right here, I know it's way too small for you to see. But that little mark right there, that was a mistake. That was an accident. There were a couple others that happened here. This is before I knew what was good painting. But that mark went on the sky. See some of the little white building spilled over into the blue sky. And after it was there, I went, huh, that looks kind of cool. No, it doesn't look realistic. It doesn't look like, so what is that, like an antenna sticking off the building? Nothing like that. I remember when I made that mark. Isn't that funny? That's 20 years ago. I made that mark and was surprised that it looked good. That led to this discovery. And there were others. Some of the marks I still remember. I began to realize that the best painting happens when you're trying hard to do something else. That is to say, I didn't make that little mark on purpose. It happened accidentally. But after I made the mark, I went, huh, that looks kind of cool. And I had that experience several times over a couple-year period. Several times. And I came up with that expression. One of the breakable laws of painting, I call them now. Which is, the best painting happens when you're trying hard to do something else. You with me so far? I don't mean the best painting happens while you take a bathroom break and get a cup of lemonade. I don't mean that. I mean, you're painting, but you're trying to do something and something else happens. Contrast to what you're trying to do.
So another question is, how do you make something that happen that can only happen when you're not trying to make it happen?
Correct. So Harold asked the question, say it again, how can you make something happen that can only happen when you're not trying to make it happen? Is that fair?
Yep, that's it.
Brilliant. Exactly. The exact question, the exact issue. Then how can you, if the best painting happens when you're focused, concentrating on something else happening, then, well, how can you do that? Well, that's a good question. I contend somehow you can. Here's what you do. Well, let me jump to the absurd. If that's really true, then when you've got a scene like this to paint, and if you honestly believe the best painting happens of this when you're not painting this, then you might start like this. Do you see, is my abstract, let me put it this way. I'm going to use an analogy. This is somebody else's joke, not mine. Somebody else's sick joke. But, you know, if the black box always survives the airplane crash, then why doesn't everybody ride in the black box? I know that's stupid, but you know, you got the humor. Some stand-up comedian joke, right? Okay. So that's sort of what I'm saying, is if the best painting happens when you're trying to do something else, then why not always do something else? And bingo, that's a great description of the way I paint. I'm always doing something else. Now, but creeping ever so gently, ever so slowly toward realism. In fact, I'm doing more than creeping right now with all this drawing. Wouldn't you say? It's a tad bit more than creeping. But in my defense, on the other hand, see, I don't believe any of these lines. I'm not trusting that any of these marks are permanent, accurate, correct. What you see me doing now is already in this short amount of time going back and making corrections. And of course, what you see me doing right now, this is one of my tight, accurate, realistic steps in painting, right? The dance of painting right now, the dance step that I'm doing right now is dark, small, and realistic, or you could say tight, accurate drawing, right? That means you can be sure, you can count on it. Then in just a minute, as soon as I'm finished doing some more of this, then I'm going to go flying off in the opposite direction. I'm going to do large marks and decidedly abstract or loose marks. Does that make sense? One of the funny things that has happened to me and over the past 10 or 12 years, as you can see, as I started painting with my left hand, it was a very intentional decision, but it's impacted me greatly. It's made me a much better painter. And one of the ironies is that for some reason, which I do not understand at all, my left hand makes vertical marks better than I'm right-handed. My left hand makes vertical marks better than my right hand. So actually, when you see me doing all this drawing with my left hand, where I'm making vertical marks, I'm not challenging myself. In fact, I'm quite the opposite. I'm taking the easy way out. If I challenged myself, which is usually a good idea to challenge yourself. If I were really challenging myself, I'd force my right hand to make these vertical marks. So here are the same image drawn twice. The more correct drawing, I think, is darker than the light one. So we tend to see the dark lines a little bit better than the light ones. But you see already there's a bit of a jitter, an iterative effect going on. And that's going to serve me very well in the late stages of the painting. I'm going to be quite glad that those quote-unquote mistakes, so to speak, if you want to call them that, are there. I'm going to be glad that I made those mistakes. So much so that I don't even bother calling them mistakes. Back to Harold's question, because certainly there's more than one answer to that. So how can you do something accidentally, so to speak, that if you do it on purpose, it doesn't have the same effect? So glad you asked. Whoever asked that. Besides Harold, who's standing right here. One of the answers is that I give my hand permission to have little seizures without my permission. I know I'm playing word games slightly, but I let my hand make marks without consulting my brain. Of course, how much, that's another matter. If I do that too much, I end up with unattractive marks. But if I don't do it enough, I also end up with unattractive marks. Once again, I'm already redrawing this building that I just drew a minute ago, and now I've determined that I drew it wrong. As I like to say, witness my distress. Goofy smiley face. Insert goofy smiley face. Because I am clearly not distressed by that. Again, so everything I'm doing right now, I'm working, as you can tell, I'm working pretty doggone hard to be accurate. I'm going to take a guess that building, the Memorial Auditorium, at the end of the street is right about there. I'm not sure that's correct, but I'm going to put a mark there and deal with it later. Make corrections later. All right, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. And if you take one of my classes, in fact, I don't allow you to do this. Every rule could be broken, right? The rule is you don't erase, quote unquote, you don't erase your erroneous or mistaken lines. That's the general rule. Every rule can be broken. And by the way, what is it that causes one to break a rule? The answer is because there's some other countermanding rule. There's a rule that pushes you in the opposite direction. So that's exactly what I have on my hands here at the moment. The rule is don't erase these erroneous lines because they're going to make the final painting more interesting. That's the rule. But I have here a circumstance that mitigates against that. And that is I'm having a hard time in a quick glance. If I look carefully, I can see it, but in a quick glance, I'm having a hard time figuring out which one is my correct line, my correct marking, right? So again, if you're a student, you're not allowed to do this. I hope you catch the irony. I'm kidding, kind of. Rats. Okay, I'm looking for a 1-inch chip brush. I don't see one. No problem. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks. All right, so I am going to sort of erase, and I don't not obliterate completely, but I'm going to diminish some of these lines because I'm having too difficult of a time. So I'm just going to push them back a little bit. So all of those lines are incorrect. And this line is incorrect. Now, one of the differences between erasing and what I'm doing, first of all, when you erase, you're usually mad at yourself because you made a mistake. So you have this self-flagellation thing is going on. Oh, fill in your own naughty words. You're mad at yourself because you messed up. Don't go there. I'm not mad at myself. Like I say, witness my distress. I'm not worried a bit. But the other thing is, if you're erasing, you're not painting any longer. You're no longer acting like an artist. You're acting like an eraser. And the essence of good painting is making interesting marks. So if you ever do have to, quote unquote, erase, by all means, make sure that you do it with interesting marks, which is what I'm doing, trying to do right now. I'm trying to make my, quote unquote, eraser marks interesting to look at. Okay. Now, I feel like now, like I can, yeah. And again, that's very unusual for me. Okay? If you take a class from me, I will not let you do that. Unless it's an advanced class. All right, that's good enough. Now I can see the shape of the sky and compare it to my photograph. And, hello, sweetie.
What time do you guys leave?
6:15, 10 after 6.
Okay, I got some hamburger stroganoff, like over noodles.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, good. We'll come down in a while.
Sure.
Thanks, sweetie. Appreciate it. I'm going to raise my painting up a little bit because it's too hard to reach the bottom.
That's 100% better than I can do. 100%.
A lot of it can go to the
Okay.
There we go. It'll be a lot easier to reach now.
You said leave around 6:20?
6:10.
6:10.
Yeah, so we need to head down there at about 6:40, 5:45. So half an hour.
Yep.
Also, please notice that when let me move you guys a little bit. When I was doing that erasing, notice how many of the lines, the erroneous lines, I did not wipe out. I let them show through. Which, if the spirit of your eraser comes on, or you're all mad at it and you want to obliterate the, you don't paint that way. That is not painting. That's having a emotional slip into your wrong mind when you do that kind of junk. So you don't do that. That's really what I mean when I say don't erase. You don't let that grumpy thing come on you. You don't make good decisions when you're grumpy. But all those lines are still doing their work. They're still creating little iterative. But I just had to push them back a little bit so I could see mostly if I've got the shape of this sky right. It's very close right now. All right, let's do some quick outlines down here at the bottom. So again, it would be good for you to register in your mind, even right now, that even what I'm doing now of very linear, liney drawing with brushes is a rather unconventional approach to painting, is it not? This is not the way Kevin McPherson does it, in other words. I like Kevin McPherson. I also like to pick on him because I'm not him. Pardon me while I change monitors. Yeah, so even this rather fussy, accurate drawing is not traditional. Yeah, fine with me if you make a note of that. When I started out this general approach to painting, which if I can describe as layers of very loose transparent acrylics and then oil corrections and details on top. Okay, fair description of my technique. I didn't used to, in the first 5 years, maybe more, I didn't do this drawing step at all. I would much more literally allow the image to grow, emerge out of the fog, out of the layers, little by little. And in some ways, I still prefer that. But what I discovered was that way too often, I would get 90% through a painting and then discover a horrible drawing mistake because I didn't stop and do what I'm doing now, which is very accurate, careful, slow, precise. I didn't do this. I just continue to paint much looser, and it didn't work because, as I said, I would discover mistakes, and that was awful. So then I changed my method to this, which is early on, and as you see, pretty carefully, pretty tediously, go ahead and nail down the drawing. Okay. So again, even though part of me would prefer to not do this. I have found that it's better. Now, if I were painting a purely nature scene where there's more leeway, you know, if you make a tree a little too tall, a little too short, mountain a little bit too steep, a little too flat, doesn't really matter. Nobody can point at it and say, hey, that ain't right. But when you're doing man-made objects, everybody knows that these buildings, for instance, are all vertical. I mean, if there's a building that is intentionally built, you know, like this, one side of it, then we would make that clear. But for the most part, you know good and well all these buildings are vertical, for instance, and that they're all horizontal and they're all built on 90 degrees. Again, if they weren't, it would be obvious. So therefore, the tolerances for this kind of work are much narrower. You have to get the perspective right. Anyway, so that's why I have then switched my methods to what you see me doing here. And again, you regulars, you've heard me say this probably several times, that my clear stated objective for the last I don't know how long, 8 or 9 years, I would think, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. I lose track of time. Clear, stated objective, like I've stated, this is what I want to do. I want my paintings to be more accurate and more messy, both. And so everything you see me doing fits within that general framework. And if it sounds to you like those are two opposite things, then good, you're paying attention. I want my paintings to be more accurate and more messy. That is correct. So again, everything you see me doing can be understood if you understand that simple objective. Messier and more realistic. And that really, by the way, in the last year, that really pertains to cars. I used to be a lot looser with cars, and I decided it wasn't working for me. So I'm going to be working pretty hard on all of these vehicles. But at the same time, more messies. Aye, there's the rub. All right. I do, by the way, have a step-by-step, a blow-by-blow, a list of my painting technique, my painting process. And if you want to get that, download it. It's available on my YouTube channel. So you are on my channel right now if you're watching this. You just click on the little round picture of me, right? You know how YouTube works. Click on the round picture of me and it will take you to my channel. And along the top at my channel, it says, I forget, home, maybe, home, videos, playlist, community. It's about the fourth word over is the word community. I don't know why they call it that. It seems strange. But anyway, that's what it's because I'm inviting you to be part of my community. I'm not sure. But anyway, if you click on community, you will see still shots, images, pictures. In my case, it's either pictures of finished paintings or the occasional outline, like I'm talking about right now. So you can go there and observe that, download it. As it says at the top in fine print, that when I made that list about 2 months ago, that's where I was at that time, and it was approximate because I do not follow my own list. Whew. Okay, it turns out I can hardly reach the top of this canvas, so bear with me for just a minute. I have to lower the canvas down again. Maybe I can find a happy medium. How about there? That might do. All right. So I've just spent a long time with small brushes, fairly small brushes, not short brushes. I'm talking brushes like this, right? That's small brushes, small points on the end. Drawing. So the dance of painting would dictate, although understand there's no dictator in painting. There's just a mild suggester. But the dance mindset, the dance analogy would dictate that my next layer be big, not light, big, dark, and somewhat abstract. Why? Because the opposite of what I've just been doing. So I've just been doing small, skinny lines, dark, and accurate, rigid, realistic. Small, dark, real. Opposite of that is large, light, and abstract. Now I can't do light, that's out. So I'm left doing large and abstract. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Does that make sense? That's my thought process here. So going back to some large brushes, I have a couple 4-inch brushes. And I'm going to do probably some local color. By the way, I've got a butcher's tray here, and I have some gloss acrylic medium. And anytime that I want to apply a particularly transparent acrylic layer, you have to use medium. You can't do that with water. So if you use enough water to make the layer, the glaze, transparent enough, that much water will cause it to just run completely off the canvas, and you're left with almost nothing there. So if you want to really pale, you have to do what I'm doing right here, which is add quite a bit of medium. Okay, what I'm painting right now is the sky. I decided, not typical of me, I decided to do an underpainting of the sky, violet, purple. And some of you guys, you really, no, whoops, we got sun coming. How about that? Sun finally came out today. Especially when you're doing cityscapes, maybe any kind of landscape. You should think about this with a landscape, but it's really very much with a cityscape or a town that you should have the color of your painting should be a clamshell. That is same at the top. The top and the bottom relate to each other very closely, are very closely related. That's especially true, as I say, in a cityscape. Because what color is asphalt? Yeah, right. It's dark gray. It's black. And then what happens to it as it ages? It gets lighter, so it turns a very nondescript gray. All right? And what color does gray appear to be out in the world? The answer is it reflects whatever colors are around it, most especially the sky. So like water, asphalt gets most of its color from the sky. So good practice to at least think seriously when you're painting asphalt. Paint the same color as the sky. So that's what I just did. All right, let's continue. Now I started to say some of you really need to notice that when I say I'm painting the sky, and I was painting it purple, right? Look, it came all the way out to here. That's a good 7 inches. This is 10 inches outside of its boundary. Likewise, as is this. I'm just, as an example. That's called loose painting. Does that make sense? And some of you think loose painting is if you go a 1/4 inch outside the boundary. I'm hoping I'm encouraging you to redefine what you consider to be loose. 9 inches outside the boundary. Of course, that's on a 42 by 42 inch painting, right? So it's all relative according to the size of painting you're doing. But most of you would do well to pay attention to that, because most of you are like me, which is, you repeat after me, I'm tight, but I'd like to get loose. All right? Most of you are on the same journey I'm on, from tight realism and I did a line. Did you see that? I did a defined edge, and then it came over it. So in other words, the looseness goes both ways. Now, let me just give you one other quick tip, since you're still watching. Since we lost all the riffraff that left us. I'm kidding. That's very not true. People are coming and going all the time. That means we can talk about them after they leave. What was I going to start saying? Oh, there's another principle that we are fleshing out, that we are aware of. If you paint in this loose manner, and again, for some of you, you newcomers, I have just redefined what loose means. Like I said, because I know what you're thinking. That, getting, okay, 1/2 inch outside the boundary. Golly, that's loose. That's Mabel gone mild. Not mild, wild. Mabel is our imaginary, fictitious artist woman. Or maybe her name is Ethel, I'm not sure. There's another principle that we're nodding toward, that we're acknowledging when we do this, and it's this. Again, one of the breakable laws of painting. All the laws are breakable, but you gotta know what they are first. If you don't think there are laws, that's just because you're a lousy painter. And that does apply to some art professors, by the way. All right, I'm getting in trouble. I'll stop there. Here it is. That we like to see. This is the other principle that is getting fleshed out when we paint, 9 inches outside the boundary. The human eye enjoys seeing little bits of the object that have spilled into the background, and little bits of the background that have spilled into the object. Okay, so I use the analogy, the word picture I usually use here is you're painting a barn. Blue sky behind the barn. The human eye gets a kick out of seeing little bits of the red barn that have spilled out into the blue sky, and little bits of the blue sky that have crunched into and are on top of the red barn. Okay? I could go even deeper. I could get even more philosophical about why that is true, but I won't. I'm just going to leave it as a truism at this point. Some other day I'll have the energy to explain why that is true. But if you just at the moment, I'm just going to ask you to take my word for it. Ignore me at your peril. Now, if Kevin McPherson happens to be watching this video, Richard Schmid, or a whole host of other people that are way better than I am. You guys correct me. The rest of you, no, keep it to yourself. Woo, it's getting real in here today, Harold. Doggone it. He's a pretty good painter, but he's the most arrogant old guy I've ever heard. Oh, boy. I'm almost old enough to become arrogant. I'm 65. I've been painting since I was 5. That's an exaggeration. I've been drawing since I was 5. That's not an exaggeration. Oh boy. Anyway, so we like seeing little bits of the object in the background, little bits of the background in the object. Count on it. Has to do with the way our brains work, the way our eyes are made, the way nature works. It's a nod to Claude Monet and all the other impressionistic painters. Those were some of the secrets, the realities that they were discovering. All right, now finally, so the peripheral. Do you like the way I overpronounce some of my words? Drives you nuts, doesn't it? Anyway, so the periphery stuff is done. Now it's time to get serious about some warm glow and glazes. Get more medium. I'm over here with my butcher tray, pouring out probably 2 or 3 tablespoons of glaze at a time. One of the good things about painting with 2 hands is that when you paint with 2 hands, your brain can't quite keep up with what your hands are doing. That's a good thing, because it helps keep you from getting bogged down. And if you're an artist, you know what bogged down means.
It's one of the ways to allow you to do something you can't do when you're trying to do it.
That's right. Yeah, painting with 2 hands allows you to do something. You're kind of doing an end run around your brain. Your brain doesn't have time to say, no, don't do that. Oh, you already did it. Isn't that fun? Now I'm just having some fun. Saying, doggone, that looks kind of good. And that's not boasting. I'm the most surprised person here. It's like, huh, how about that? Who'd have thought that? I'm playing with you a little bit because I've done it so many times now, but it's still a surprise. Every time it starts to look kind of cool, it's a surprise. I am running out of clean water. That's right, I can make it. All right, now comes a fun layer. This is one of my most favorite, and it's just about ready to go, Harold. So Harold and I are going down to Cary to our monthly Painters Forum group. But oh my goodness, I've got to get, again, this is just, let me back up. You know you're painting in a technique that fits you when you're excited about every single stage of the painting process. That's me. But if there was one stage that I'm almost always most tickled about doing, it's this one right here, the first white layer. For some reason, it's just so much fun. Okay, by the way, what you just saw me do is a trick I do often. First of all, I drew in an overly fastidious manner. I drew too tight. Did you see that? Hard edges? That's because I needed definition. I wanted accuracy. Like right here, I want this mark right here to be accurate. So it is accurate. But now that it's, and I'm going to do another one. But now that it's accurately rendered, angle, the sharpness, the location, but now that it's accurately rendered, I can mess it up quite a bit, and you can still see the accurate part. See what I'm talking about? Here's the accurate. In fact, I'll scratch it just for fun. That's too much. Unscratch it. Okay, you can still see the ghost of the accuracy, but it's very loose. I do that trick right much, quite often. I'm going to use this brush just to make sure that my perspective is right, and I'm glad I did that, because no, this seems to be a little steeper. So here, once again, I'm going to, I want this line here has to be quite accurate. So as you can see, I'm going slow and being careful. But now that it's there, I can mess it up quite a bit, and you can still see the ghost of the accuracy. So in my book, you get the best of both worlds. You get the accuracy that you need, but you also get the looseness that you want. I use that trick quite a bit. I give you permission to use it too. Now, do I always do it that way? No, that would be redundant. That would result in repetitive marks, in boring marks. So no, I'm not going to do it every single time. But it's a good trick to know. All right, I am just about out of time, so I'm not even going to be able to finish this white layer. But it's a layer I'll be excited about coming back to. So that's always good. Good time to, when you stop painting, real good answer is when you're having a good time, when you hate to quit. And that's right where I'm at right now. So that's good. That means that tomorrow morning I'm more likely to bound out of bed, excited about tackling the next phase of this painting. All right, there's my last mark right there. Well, and it's too strong of a mark, so I'm gonna mess it up. There. There. All right, let me see some of your comments before I go. Thanks for your company. Yeah, I'll consider broadcasting some of our painters group tonight. It depends who's there. Let's see. Michael McEwen's still here, and Phil Pink Haze Pie still here, and Bill Vape's here again. Michael laughing at my digressions. You guys, thanks, that's fun. And Michael says there's an watercolor artist named Stephen Cronin. He is an odd and abstract name, but he's very, very, very loose. Good, I'll look him up, Michael, thank you. Stephen Cronin with a C. And Pink Haze Pie says Dan is painting a lightsaber battle. That's right. And Nicholas Bravo, good to hear from you again. And Rick Charlotte, yay, get to study with you again. Thank you, Rick, appreciate that. And R. Taylor says, why don't you show us how you prep your acrylic container? Oh, haven't done that in a while. Mr. R. Taylor, or Mrs. R. Taylor, forgive me. Yeah, thank you. I will do that again. Can't do it right now, I've got to run. But I will show you how I prep these. We're fortunate enough in Raleigh to have a store called the Container Store. So that I was able to go in and piece things together, you know. Here, let me point you down. We do have a store called the Container Store. Wow. And I found several combinations. I don't know if they intended, it's the same manufacturer, I don't know if they intended for these to nest in the bigger one or not, but indeed they do, so that's a real advantage for me. I'm painting on the run. All right, y'all, it's been really fun having you here. Thank you for helping me get started on this commission painting. And I hope to broadcast again tomorrow. Conceivably even tonight, we'll see. All right, thanks. Bye-bye, y'all.